What the fuck? Oh. Wait. Am I even in? Oh, I don't
Testing.
understand.
Yada
There
yada
we
yada.
go. I don't know how to stream anymore, guys. I I'm a little rusty apparently. How do I work this thing again? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Hey, it's Justin. I don't know if you remember me, but we used to go way back in 2015. We would get together, we'd play Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars, and oh boy, it was the bee's knees. And now I just stare at a computer screen all day, and I don't have energy anymore. Well, hello. Hello again. I've missed you all. Who do we got here? Hello. Who's in my room? We got Mike Kyle. We got Lauren Klein. Ooh. Oh, Lauren's been writing all day and completely forgot it is both. What have you been writing? What are you writing, Lauren? And of course we have Kellen. Kellen, thank you very much for your help today. Getting everything set up. Kellen's a machine. He's awesome. Let us praise him. Let us give thanks for Kellen. Yeah, we got Jacob Watterson, and we got Michael and Brianna, and we got Zia. Yes, Charles. You guys, you know what? What are the? Oh, we got Carly, of course. I got to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Megs is here. All right. Oh, Mike Fazio. We got Rippy McGee. We got Terry the Terrible. Is that Terry Erickson? I'm wondering. Oh my God. Oh, that's awesome, Lauren. What kind of book is it? Fantasy, sci-fi, fantasy sci-fi, romance, just straight romance horror, straight fantasy sci-fi. I don't know. Did any of the sound booth people get an invite? No. Just me. Though I did have a lovely conversation with Andrea Parsino today. Oh, she is just a lovely human being. Oh my God. Let me tell you about Andrea. She is such a, oh God, talk about a great community. So if you guys are looking for, if you guys are looking for things to do during the day, I highly recommend you check out Andy's booth. She's sick right now. She's still recovering, so she's not narrating as much as she usually does, but she is in her booth every day, or Monday to Friday. She treats it like a job. So everybody who is in her Discord knows that she's going to be reading from 11 to 1 and then from 4 to 7 or whatever. I don't know if those are the exact hours. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, she's so faithful to her fans, and she's really frustrated that she's sick right now because she's like, everybody's at home and they need like things to listen to, and she's not doing it from an egotistical sense. It's more of a sense of like she really values having them around. So anyways, I'm just gonna post a link and you guys can check it out. Did someone already link it? Kellen, did you already link it? Oh, that's the Sound Booth Theater Group. That's one of them. But she goes by Mouthy Maven. Oh, can I invite you? Can I how do I invite people? Oh, I guess I can't invite people. Oh, damn it. I don't know how to invite you. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, maybe I can't. Maybe it's invite only. Anyways, if you get a chance, I'll find out how to invite you to it, and then Yeah, am I sounding okay? Can you hear me fine? Oh, hello, Rip Snort McGee. Are you in the chat? I see you chatting on YouTube. The compression is the MVP right now. Is it super compressed? Am I too loud? Let me hear this. Oh, damn it. I don't know how to invite you. I'm sorry. Yeah, it sounds okay. It sounds okay to me. Does it sound okay to you guys? Nano. That's Rimo? No, what is that? Why can't I remember? No, Nano Rimo? Is that a thing? Has she done Nano Camp or November? I think November. Oh. Yes, of course, bud. That's all you had. You'll take whatever else you can when you can. Yeah, I wonder if it's in the other chat. I'm sorry. I'm completely off the rails here. I was supposed to read something, and now I'm just looking for a link, a plug. Is it still there? National Novel Writing Month. Compression is good. Well, okay. Oh, we got Thundermoth. Hey, Thundermoth. Welcome. Willkommen. Terry is here too. Terry is here too! That reminded me of, you guys watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Do you watch that show? God, I love that show. It's such a feel-good, happy, everything works out, funny as hell show. Tapping and up close. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Hello? Hello? Hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. Ooh, I'm a little gassy, too. That's extra. I love it. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Nine-Nine. Love the Nine-Nine. I'm just reading the chat now. This is just entertaining for me. This is Justin Reed's The Chat edition. Nothing yet. Working through a second pass with an editor. Yeah, Brianna is a great writer. I am assuming that it's Brianna talking and not Michael, but maybe Michael is a great writer as well. I don't know. Have I read any of your writing, Michael? Been watching Mornings right now. Oh yeah. Oh, it's a great morning show. Just, gets you in the right mood to. Okay, I've got an empty beer can and a full beer can, and I keep on grabbing the empty one first without fail. Scott Harry Potter. I would say the chance is near non-existent. It's not on my bookshelf, and there's a move has happened in between there, so it might not exist anymore, unfortunately. Sorry. But I'll just look up. Well, maybe I can. Oh, actually, no. I'm going to read what I promised to read, and then I'm going to give you a little extra. I'm going to start with the extra, actually. Is Mike Kyle still here? We still got Mike. Mike. Mike sent a submission. I'm just gonna say straight out, if anybody has anything that they've written that they'd like me to narrate today, just send it to me. I'll narrate that. He's breaking the rules, man. This isn't what I signed up for. Well, I know, but it's all pretty relaxed. Technically, I don't have permission to read what I'm supposed to be reading today, so I'm gonna read it anyway, probably, hopefully, unless there's like a billion people who have things that want to. That's funny, Kellen. Mike, check 1, 2. That they want to share. But yeah, I've read a few. Oh, nice. Creature comforts. Okay. Well, this is just a short little thing. I'm going to read that. Yeah, I think my favorite Justin Reed's ever was the one where everybody wrote their own submissions. That, hands down, was the best. So I would love to do more of that. Let's just say that if ever you have, a little short story that you want to share with me, whether it's horror or fantasy or whatever, send it to me, and I'm going to put it in a Google folder, Google Drive folder, and then you guys can then we can arrange to have a Justin Reads with all of that stuff. Okay. Okay. What if the stream gets shut down for copyright? We'd get a cease and desist, and then we'd just take the video down. Or if it gets shut down while I'm narrating it, that would be incredible because our reach would be fantastic if that was the case. But here's what I will say: I will be sure to plug the hell out of it, and even put all of the stuff in the comments, links and stuff, because I can do that. Ooh. Let's see. Boop, 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 boop. Do, 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 do. Okay. So, great ideas, but then you put them into paper. Turns to thought vomit. Hey, you know what? Thought vomit's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I'm sure there are some works out there that were just thought vomit that actually became really popular and successful. And probably the authors, like years later, after writing more, look back on those books and they're like, "Oh my God, what was I thinking?" But I mean, it's what made them famous. So I mean, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's okay. But yeah, I'll just say, yes, please write something less than 2,500 words. I'm going to set that as a rule. 2,500 words is about 15 to 20 minutes of narrated audio. Except haikus. Oh, I wish I could think of a clever haiku right now. But I can't. And such is that. No. Not even close. Have I read Lovecraft? Yes. I have read Lovecraft, and there's a lot of, I mean, people just talked differently back then, you know? People had time to use all of these extra words in describing doors. But I don't have time these days. No time. I ain't got no time. I also just changed songs to however I want. Oh my God. Abe Hughes, please spearhead that. Yes, there's a lot of writers in the group, and there's a lot of great writers in the group. If you started a writing group and like had one of your exercises to be write to 2,500 thing, 100%, I would read it. I would read it on Justin Reads. That would be beautiful for me because then I'm getting content. I don't have to curate it or find it. It's all there for me, and it would be legit because then there's also stories, and I know the people who are writing. Yes. Oh my God. Yes, please spearhead this. Make this a thing. Oh my God. I'm excited. You have my full blanket permission to use the group to drum up interest and get set up, and yeah. Yeah, that's maybe true. That's maybe true. They talked different back then. Yeah. He I haven't read anything that was overtly racist, as far as Lovecraft goes. I haven't read a lot of Lovecraft, which is the main reason for that. But anyways, who's up for a little Mike Kyle creature comforting, whatever that means. It's the name of this story. Gotta get in the mood. Oh, I had a long day. I'm sorry. I had a really active, proactively social day, distanced social, but lots of meetings with people and putting out some fires that unfortunately accumulated. But so I'm a bit like, I'm kind of winding down. So thank you for letting me word vomit all over your ears right now. All right, let's get into this. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Turn around, all right. Ah, 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 ee, ah, ooh, ah. Creature Comforts by Mike Kyle. The monster slumped itself in comfort. A contented burp came from somewhere in the gelatinous mass of eyeballs and tentacles that formed its body. It grunted. One of its mouth tentacles, its tongues were masses of tentacles, in one of its many mouths slithered out and plucked a finger from one of its many needle-like teeth. It tossed the finger down its throat and belched again. It reached a tentacle down to a narrow pipe near the floor. The tentacle entered the pipe, and the rest of the body followed. The cramped space wasn't uncomfortable. It liked tight spaces, places where it could lurk for hours, waiting to take its prey from ambush like the poor drunk fools who had stumbled into the alley earlier. The shocked looks on their stupid faces as the 100-eyed horror had squirted out of the drain and engulfed them and had made it chuckle. A sound like soupy mud being shoved up a rubber hose. It squiggled and wiggled along the maze of pipes to its lair, the water storage tank of an abandoned building. It needed a secure place. The time of birth was near. Already a seam was appearing down its middle. Soon it would split apart in a moment of agony and ecstasy, and there would be two. Together they would devour and feast and bring forth more of their kind. They would overrun. It reached its lair and melted into a comfortable puddle of jelly and waited. The end. That's cute. I like that. Well done, Mike. Well done. That was great. You know, I've never really thought about it, but do you think that, I mean, maybe there's a little, but I never really thought about procreation from the perspective of like an amoeba. Like, do they experience like ecstasy from splitting in half? Like, you didn't need the reenactment, but you know what I mean? Like, is that a thing? Is that a thing? I'd never thought of that. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for giving me that image. That was great. I thoroughly enjoyed that. We have another submission. Sean's home, everybody. Sean is home from his third day working the day shift at the hospital. We salute you, Sean. All right, we got a quick submission from Terry Erickson. It's just a little parable, as it were. The Green Swamp Monster. You're walking your dog next to the slough, when suddenly the surface begins to glow. Taken aback by the beauty of the light, you watch as the algae begins to coalesce into a brightly glowing mass moving toward you. By the time it reaches the shore, you've barely had time to react, dropping the dog's leash. It bolts, whimpering to the brush. Faintly, you hear a low whisper. You will be part of us soon, as it lashes out, grabbing you around the ankle. The end. I love... that could be like, cut it down here and there, rework it, and it could be a little like haiku or something. Like it felt like it had that kind of, there was a rhythm to it, there was a beat. You're walking your dog next to the. I don't know if slough is the right word. I feel like that's maybe you're looking maybe a swamp. You're walking your dog next to the swamp when suddenly the surface begins to glow, or the lake maybe. Taken aback by the beauty of the light you watch, as the algae begins to coalesce into a brightly glowing mass moving toward you. Oh, this is spoken word. Okay, all right, no, let me try this again. You're walking your dog close next to the lake, when suddenly the surface begins to glow. Taken aback by the beauty of the light you watch, as the algae begins to coalesce into a brightly glowing mass moving toward you. By the time it reaches the shore, you've barely had time to react, dropping the dog's leash, it bolts, whimpering into the brush. Faintly, you hear a low whisper. You will be part of us soon. As it lashes out, grabbing you around the ankle. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dog always survives. That's the dog that the main hero of the main storyline befriends. Yep. Spoken word. Spoken word. That was great. Thank you very much, Terry, for that submission. And I'm gonna get to reading some Shadows of Esterin. And I'll be right back. I just want to show you guys something. I guess I don't need my headphones, but whatever. This is a player handbook for a role-playing game called Shadows of Esterin. I call it Esterin. I think they pronounce it Esteren. But I disagree with their interpretation. But it's a dark fantasy game where magic is very low fantasy, but there's like whispers of demons and things in the darkness outside of the village. And if I could liken it to any of our games, it's similar to Don't Walk in the Witch. Is it the Witch's Wood? The one, or Season of the Witch maybe. I can't remember what it's called, but it's where we were in a little town, and we, I think I was a lumberjack or something, and then anyways, it's like, small medieval village, probably surrounded by a forest that's always shrouded in mist, like that sort of image, where it's like life is business as usual. It was Don't Walk in the Winterwood, but there are rumors of these things called. Oh, what do they call them? The Biqua or something? Sorry, bear with me here. It's an entire, world that they've come up with here, and anyways, there's like these dark creatures that have like different forms and stuff in the wilderness that will kill you and eat you mysteriously, and you'll never be heard from again. So, first of all, has anybody played this? Because I've had it. It's been on my radar for a long time, and I just have never gotten the chance to actually sit down and learn the rules. But one of the things that really excites me about this player's handbook, which I picked up at Gen Con, by the way, I met the owner of the company, and really cool guy. This is a popular game in France, as far as I know. And what I really love about this is it tells you all about the world, and it tells you the rules to the game, but it does it all in narrative. So like, oh, a fiend. A fiend. It's like a fiend. That's the monster that I was talking about. But yeah. So like like there's like someone's giving a lecture, right? So what is a fiend? On this subject, theories abound. They are as numerous as the steps that lead to the top of the plateaus of Ostabai. However, I have been able to draw some certainties from that inextricable mass of conjectures. Feondas cannot be classified simply. They do not specifically belong to any species, you know. So they just go through it and explain it in a narrative sense. They give it first person flair, which goes throughout the entire player handbook, which I think is so fucking dope. So yeah, sorry, just got a little distracted there for a second. Anyways, it's really cool, and so the short stories that I'm going to be reading are from that world. So you're going to get a bit of a taste of the world of Esteren Osterby. So you've played it, Michael and Brianna. You've played. Oh, that's 10 Candles. Never mind. I do like 10 Candles. That is a fun game. All right. Well, I'm just going to jump in with book number 1 or story number 1. And yeah, you know what? I might. Yeah, it's about 20 pages, so this might take the whole time. I'm going to just adjust here so that I can read the book. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Bear with me, guys. You can tell I'm rusty here. But I also kind of like it. I like the chill atmosphere. It's not too much of a production. Uh-oh. Did you lose me? There we go. Should be able to see me there. But you can't hear me. There we go. Gotta pitch 10 Candles. Oh, yeah, of course. It's a great game. It's a great game. Let's see. I'm just going to keep on smacking my lips. Thank you, Kellen. Yes, Kellen has posted the link. Technically, again, I will reiterate that technically we do not have their permission to read this right now. So I'm breaking the law, which ain't cool. But also, definitely check out their game. And if you end up watching this, people of Agate RPG, please tell us to cease and desist, and we'll take the video down. Oh my god, I'm so lame. Okay, let's do this. I can see the chat. I can see myself. Let me just adjust it a little bit. I want to be able to lean, I want to be able to, be comfortable. All right, this is good. Nope. Book's upside down. Classic mistake. All right. Call to Action by Iris. Always this same monotonous road I followed steadily, but with growing reluctance. My horse walked at a regular pace, not needing any guidance, leaving me free to let my thoughts drift off into the dusty pathways and the uneven horizon. In this dry mountainous region to the north of Candlewood, not far from the Gwydrite border, the vegetation appeared to grow laboriously near the brooks and rivers born from melting glaciers. Everything else was only a dry, desolate desert. The view might have been less bleak in summer, but in this cold, wind-beaten early fall, with the low, gray clouds looming, it felt as if I were reaching the end of the world. Only 5 books remained from Aunt Halara's library. Not realizing their true value, she had allowed me to take them. She had inherited them from her father, Glesran Mac Emanon, who had gotten his hands on these treasures through the pillage of Gwydrite monasteries during the War of the Temple. Normally, only high-ranking initiates were allowed to read these books. I had all the time in the world to read them when I was in her service. I was just a distant cousin, a poor relative, and I had been accepted out of charity in order to act as a companion to her daughters. Since then, Louisa had been wed to a lord of the Emerald Crescent, while Abigail had left to marry one of the vassals of the Prince of Farl. The domain itself had been assigned to Oshin, the elder son. There only remained a small part, a simple legacy left to the younger son, Sethern, the domain of Highwinds. This was the fiefdom we were traveling to. A bird of prey was gliding high in the sky. It must have felt a freedom and completeness that I was sure I would never experience. I stared at this dark, majestic shape of impressive wingspan for some time, filled with nostalgic longing. The Corvus vulture, a nasty one. Sethern had just named the bird. So it was a scavenger? I think the main character is a woman. I'm pretty sure it's a she. Sethern had just named the bird. So it was a scavenger? Legend sometimes portrayed them as harbingers of death, and even as attracting the evil eye. In my scientific books, I had read that they were actually necessary, since by feeding on corpses and rotting carcasses, they prevented illnesses from spreading and bodies from contaminating the rivers. These carrion birds had a fearsome reputation, even though they provided well-being for all by standing on the forefront of macabre horrors. An archer drew his bow to kill this cursed bird. He took aim while I prayed that he would miss. Sethern cheered him, while I did not have the strength to intervene in the face of their unanimous agreement. The arrow whizzed away, but missed by far the bird of prey which flew off, apparently aiming for a carcass on a distant slope. It was now just a dot on the horizon. I felt relieved while the others were making jokes. I was suddenly taken away from my thoughts by a gentle embrace and a kiss. "Wake up, Sterren! We're almost there!" I smiled faintly at Sethern, my husband. He tried to reassure me about the horrible bird, whose shadows of misfortune could not befoul our marriage and our life at high winds. As it often happened, he misread me. He thought that I feared irrational superstitions. Because I often read, he had gotten into his head that I was a fragile and impressionable dreamer. Even our union was the result of a misunderstanding. Less than 3 weeks ago, Aunt Halara was discussing the division of property among her children. She wanted to be fair and leave no one out. She had also decided to leave a sizable nest egg to long-time servants. She had been laying everything out so that she may spend her last days peacefully thereafter. To everyone's astonishment, when she mentioned me, Sethern said that he would marry me, as if it were obvious. I had grown up in the shadow of my noble cousins, and I was only a commoner, a well-treated servant. I had not learned to say no, nor even to express my thoughts aloud. They decided what was best for me, and I must admit that I had never suffered from the sweet, comfortable life I had been offered. I had gotten used to following recommendations. Marry Sethern? I had nothing against him. Why would I? He was a merry, brave young man, always full of enthusiasm. He was very persuasive and talkative, the very opposite of me, who had always been able to truly express herself only through writing. With his happy disposition, He shrugged off any worries his status as the youngest might have brought him. He always repeated that this difficulty would be the opportunity for him to earn fame heroically and to obtain through his glory what his elder brother had due to mere birth order. I was encouraged to consent to the proposal, and as I had no serious objection, I accepted. A gust of wind seeped through the flaps of my garments, which I gathered close to my body with a shiver. The high winds. I could only face this place with graveness. The structure was twisted, bare, and built on a headland overhanging a yawning chasm. It irresistibly evoked a broken tower, an image of destroyed ambition and wishes. This former fort had been built to protect rays against Guidrite incursions, and its primary function still showed through. Rock, ice, and dust appeared to be all one could hope for here. A life of bitterness. I realized that I had made a terrible mistake when I accepted such a convenient marriage. Despite all my fears, I was not able to change Sethern's mind. All that I could only clumsily express were just the worries of a little girl who had always lived in a lofty castle. I could not appreciate the potential of the cold walls, rotting wood frame, and leaky roof, the dreary, dismal loneliness I portrayed when describing the dull village half an hour's walking distance away was much exaggerated. The people there just needed some time to get used to new faces, that was all. Dismounting my horse in an unpaved courtyard, I tried to see the place as he did. A gate, and on the left, a shaky tower that looked dangerously unsteady to me. A short path leading to the main castle building. On the right, another tower, smaller and distorted. The well stood near the stables, close to the half-buried kitchen door. The ground floor was still partly habitable, but the large reception halls, the lord's rooms, all the prestigious places that offered a breathtaking view of the surroundings, were now crumbling ruins. Whole portions of the roof were missing. The second and third floors of this part of the building were still accessible through a circular side staircase. A taciturn villager who had welcomed us and acted as our guide warned us against the badly damaged wooden floor. If we were to go to the upper parts, the sensible thing to do was to follow the main beams, which still supported the floor. Otherwise, we might fall to our deaths. Even the stout-hearted, optimistic Sethern went pale as he heard the floor cracking under his feet when we ventured inside. Just going to read this. Is a work student. It exists through various media. Innovative and Carlos Media is the first French creation of its kind to create and obtain a dozen of praises internationally. Yeah. Legit. Yeah. They, like, I think I'd never really heard of them, as I don't know if they're not as established here in the States, but apparently they're quite a thing in Europe, which is awesome. I really, like, there's something about the universe that just, pulls me, Dismounting my horse in the unpaved courtyard, I tried to see the place as he did. A gate, and on the left, a shaky tower that looked dangerously... Oh, wait. Hold on. I already read that. I swear I do this for a living. Excuse me. That night, Sethern slept very little, pondering with a thoughtful look I had never seen him with before. He refused to hear my opinion, saying that if it was up to him to solve this problem, I had nothing to worry about and everything would be all right very soon. Exhausted from our journey as I was, I did not insist, in spite of my skepticism, and I quickly fell asleep, overwhelmed with fatigue. He woke me up before dawn. While I was still struggling to collect my thoughts, he began to talk wildly. He was frantic. He had a great idea. He knew what to do. He had to leave now. Until he came back, I had to take care of the most urgent roof repairs. I would hear from him soon. He would find money. I saw him trot away in the early dawn. I was wrapped in a wool blanket and felt as in a dream. All of this seemed so strange, absurd, and futile. But what could I expect from someone who was convinced he could rise through strength of arms? Adventures, epic journeyings, unexpected encounters, discoveries, and the exploration of mysterious ruins in a quest for treasures were now his. As for me, I had a ruin of my own to take care of, exposed to omnipresent cold winds, and was doomed to endless monotonous days amidst a landscape of rocks, dust, and ice. I was almost unbearably alone. The villagers ignored me and spoke with an accent I could barely understand, when they deigned to talk to me at all. They came and worked on the roof to stabilize its deterioration. They put up ladders almost everywhere and removed the most dangerous parts of the floor, leaving large empty spaces. The echoes sounded even more ghastly to me. Weeks went by in silence and boredom. Winter came, and with it snow fell like a white net, a bleak, hopeless vision of death. I felt trapped, almost immured, buried alive. In this prison, where only my docility had confined me, I spent many hours reading my few books. I had no other distraction but the flight of my vulture friend that often hovered over the domain of high winds. I had time to seek to solve the mysteries of the occult language, which I discovered and learned with great difficulty. The mysteries of this world freed my mind. Trying to wrap my head around this alien knowledge kept me busy and distracted me from my sulking. After the solstice, the days grew longer, and Varigol brought me Sethern's third leather. He remained vague about his activities, but he seemed confident. It would not take too long now. With the end of winter, the snow melted without the onset of spring bringing the slightest hope of renewal and happiness. Instead, it felt as if fall had come again. The horizon was heavy with dark clouds, and the cold wind blew strong, this gloomy, whistling messenger worming everywhere. In the kitchen, which had nearly become my whole world, I had put an old rolled carpet against the door bottom, and I had nailed a piece of oilcloth to replace the broken window pane. It was not the first storm I had to face in these mountains. The domain of high winds was aptly named. That night, I wondered once more about what I should do. For too long, I had become used to obediently doing what I was told, asking no questions and relying on others to choose what was best for me. However, it was clear that such a life now led to a dead end. Staying here, forlorn, dejected, and bored out of my mind was out of the question. Even though I had nothing, I could still walk to the capital city and find a profession as a scholar, scribe, copyist, or teacher. Anything but losing myself here. Thunder roared deafeningly. I was sitting near the fire, waiting and dreaming before the dancing, crackling flames. This joyful, glowing heat always brought me some measure of solace during the long nights. In the worst of winter, I had gotten used to sleeping here on the floor, wrapped in my blankets, feeling like a beggar. Tomorrow I would pack my bags. I was feeling uneasy about the idea of crossing the country by myself, but I was trapped. The longer I waited, the harder it would be for me to act. It was then that there came a knock at the door. This had never happened before and left me astounded. Another knock. Thunder roared deafeningly. Who? A villager? Why so late? A Varigol caught by surprise by the downpour? When I finally decided to check this out, my visitor began to shake the handle of the door, which, like everything else here, did not close properly, and threw it open. A dark, massive shape, illuminated by the brief flashes of lightning, lumbered in. He was wearing ancient armor. I wondered how he could bear its weight, the helmet of which he took off. Sethern? It was his face, his features, but his expression was hard and absent. As tired and pensive as he looked, I truly thought for a moment that I was mistaken and that it was a stranger. What warrior could wear such equipment here, in such a remote place that even brigands left it alone? Now that he came nearer the firelight, I could make out patterns on his armor that looked like carvings I had formerly seen in a book. I did not remember what they were exactly, but they disturbed me deeply. Something in me told me to flee from the darkness, I suspected. But in spite of it all, it was still Sethern, even though I had thought about leaving him and abandoning this ruined house shortly before. I was lost, and as usual, I had difficulties both gathering my thoughts and finding the right words. His sudden question gave me a start. "Well, wife, is this how you welcome your husband?" Sorry, would you like to have dinner?" "Why not?" "I'll fetch you something. Do you want me to help you remove your armor?" "No." "How was your journey? Did you find money to restore the domain of Highlands?" "I have acquired enough." "Really?" "You don't believe me? Wait." I could not keep my voice steady and was concerned with every detail. Who would refuse to remove such monstrous armor when he was soaked? He went out and came back with a metal chest whose style and coating were apparently the same as his armor. It all seemed considerably heavy to me. He dropped the chest near the fireplace, which was then lit by a flickering reddish brightness, as if pulsing with life. "Open it." I did. The hinges were time-worn and rusty. I had to force it a little, and suddenly came face to face with the sparkle of riches proportionate to Sethern's wildest expectations. Gold, coins, gemstones, and jewels of amber and emerald. With such treasure, the domain of Highlands could not only be restored, but also become a wealthy and pleasant home. I was torn between bedazzlement and a nagging concern that I could not disregard. I could not look Sethern straight in the eyes. There was something in his features that made me feel very ill at ease. If he were judging and scorning me, keeping my head down, I examined the coins and jewels while he was eating and drinking beside me. He seemed huge. His armor made him look like a giant, even though he walked almost casually with it. "You found this treasure and your armor in the same place?" "Indeed." "Where was it?" "In the Moroim Gridra, near the Ordekai Peak in the ancient city of Gwerd." "Gwerd? The troglodytic town that is said to have cut itself off from the rest of the world during the Erguin by closing its doors? And where everyone starved to death?" "Many of them were killed by Fanda springing from the depths of the mines. Hunger only finished those who had shut themselves up inside the last bastion." "Did you go there alone?" "No." "So your companions also have treasure like this one?" "No." "Did they not want to share?" "They're dead." This is what happens when you ask too many questions. You learn truths that you would sometimes rather ignore. At that moment, I did not want to know whether Sethern had killed them to keep the whole treasure for himself. I dreaded to learn how he could know the details of Gwerd's fall. The Sethern I knew would never have found an ancient city by himself. He had to have relied on the assistance of experts. Things like that did not happen in a day. They had to have explored the region and its underground for a long time. Now they were dead. I was torn between fear and a cold line of thought that kept analyzing and juxtaposing the elements of the story. I was sitting by the fire at the feet of my husband, who was wearing that ancient armor and casually eating while it was still raining outside. Silently and calmly, I was trying to weigh what was in my favor and against me. Things did not look good. How long have we been married? Oh, wait. How long have we been married? Since the end of last summer. We're now in early spring, even though it's long to come in these regions. Oh, almost 1 year. And I left my pretty wife here alone. You wanted to restore this castle so that we may live here decently. The nights you spent sleeping alone must have been long. Fortunately, I'm back now. I glanced at him and saw that he was done eating. He took another draught of wine and faced me. I understood that he more or less wanted to take me for dessert. Why did I see it as rape? As I saw it, we had a marriage of convenience, but when I watched him in that armor that must have been worn during the end of the Guerre by one of its heroes who died in such abominable circumstances, and heard that most metallic sound from that automaton-like man, my whole being was filled with loathing. The mere possibility of intimate contact with that harsh, stiff, animate being gave me a kind of cold nausea. The only thing that prevented me from panicking was a silly thought. How did he intend to do it without removing that armor? It almost seemed stuck to his skin, just like an insect's shell. I tried to analyze that protection without looking at him too intently, not wanting to trigger something that would mean my end. I could not see any defects. Even the joints were complemented with a sort of leather or oilcloth that folded and unfolded with each movement. It all looked absolutely impenetrable. Only a skilled swordsman would be able to find where to strike. With just my fists or a dagger, I would be wasting my time. Where's your bedroom? The threat was getting clearer. The shock made me gulp. What could I do? Flee into the castle and hide? Run into my room and lock myself up? In both cases, he would catch up, and I imagined that he would prove all the more violent. Should I submit? Thousands of women did so out of political interest or lack of money. Show me. He should have known. His questions showed that he was not Sethern. Not even a perverted Sethern, but someone whose face looked like his and who only knew a few scraps of his life. That meant that he did not know the castle. Could that be my chance? I could probably outrun him, then flee on his horse. It was worth trying. I stood up and walked to the corridor, then started running like never before to reach the circular staircase leading to the upper floor. There, the rooms in various conditions, connected with ladders leading to the attic, offered me a real opportunity. As fast as he could be in that monstrous armor, he had to be at least 3 times my weight. The floor could give way. I just had an idea, and it gave me some hope. I knew where to go and where to find salvation. I was still ahead, but not by much. He was quick. I dashed up the stairs as fast as possible, lifting my dress so as not to trip on it. He did not waste his time insulting me. He was catching up. I could feel it. Terror overcame me. It seemed to me that this staircase would never end. Then, at last, the first floor. I almost thought I was safe, but he lunged at me and caught my ankle, pulling sharply. Momentum drove me forward, and I fell down painfully on the corridor's rough floor. It took my breath away, and I knew I had to find a solution very quickly. The best option seemed to try to kick him with my free leg. I turned around for more leverage, but gave a sudden scream at what I saw. I thought I saw his face contort, taking the form of a blackish, grinning mask. My blow lost what little strength it had. Fear froze me. A part of myself urged me to recover lest I die, but I could not help it. I couldn't move. As he was pulling me toward him, I felt like a fly caught by a spider, about to eat it alive. "This is my room," I heard myself say these words. I did not even know why. It was a pathetic attempt to calm him down just when he seemed about to unleash all his violence against me, even though it was obvious I wanted to escape. "Very well. Let us proceed." Once again, that feeling of absurdity came over me, and I no longer knew if I had to be scared of getting beaten or going mad. It was very dark. I opened the door while he kept a tight grip on my arm. "Let me take a light." He nodded without letting go. I went straight ahead, past my wardrobe and my bed on the right, toward a dressing table where a candelabra stood. The glimmer of the candles let me see Sethern's face in the mirror in front of me. I could not help but strongly hope I was mistaken, that it was some cruel joke and that he would be himself again. I hoped so as much as I did not believe it, and I was giving in to despair. This enemy who had suddenly appeared at my door this stormy night could abuse me to his heart's content. This almost organic armor made him insanely strong, and I was on my own. Tears welled up in my eyes. I was still reluctant to accept my fate. Just going to pause it there. This story is going in a very dark direction. So if you like, I can message you when I finish reading it. It's got about 6 more pages. I'm going to continue reading it. I know it's different people have different tolerances, but if you want to put me on mute, then you are more than welcome to, and I'll let you know when it's over. But if not, shit's getting dark. Sethern's face in the mirror. He embraced me with his metal hands while pushing me against the dresser, scratching me much more than caressing me and tearing off pieces of my dress. Watching his reflection squeezing me and clawing me, sometimes till blood came, made him chuckle with evil glee. How could I tolerate such a thing, even from a false Sethern? Our marriage was indeed based on a misunderstanding, but he was still like a brother to me. Would I let a monster use his face as a mask, defile him, and inflict all this on me? Certainly not. Not as long as I lived. Clenching my teeth, I did not shout. The monster was panting so heavily that the mirror had started fogging up. Don't resist. Apparently I must have tensed or disturbed him. I did not really know. He started biting my neck and shoulder with rising excitement, but as I suspected, his armor hampered his goal. Such a foolish blunder infuriated him. He had to at least remove the cup shielding the sensitive parts of his body. The problem was doing it with only one hand embedded in a metal glove. He was all brute strength and animal urge and did not think much. I suddenly became aware of what I considered obtuseness. I suddenly became aware of it was like a revelation. This being who had terrified me was primitive, deprived of subtlety, and I had been witless not to notice it earlier and take advantage of it one way or another. He took me by my braids and lay me down on the dressing table with one hand and raised my skirt. I was off the floor now, and my nose was almost pressed against the mirror, half covered with mist. I felt that pressing himself against me had driven him to the edge. He was scratching my thighs and crushing me painfully between him and the wood, but he was still struggling with his cup, and the claws of his metal gloves were now proving a disadvantage. The stranger brutally pulled my head back, using my braids as reins. Baffled, I stared wide-eyed at the mirror where an invisible hand was writing in reverse. Was it real, or a figment of my imagination that was desperately seeking to escape the sordid end awaiting me? Fight! Kill him! A ghost? I had spent the winter here. There was nothing haunting the domain of Highwinds. How? Who? Call my name! Call whose name? Suddenly, I understood. This body was no longer Sethern's. He had lost it to an evil spirit, but there remained something of him that had become a ghost, anchored to his own bones, prisoner of a flesh he could no longer live in. How could it be? The armor? This all-too-living thing, thirsting for the extreme intensity of existence, obsessed with experiencing pleasure? An object of power? I had read books on the subject, but I did not think I would one day have the opportunity to be so close to one. "Sethern! Sethern! Sethern MacEmenon!" I shouted as loudly as I could, my voice shrill, high enough to bring me pain. I caught a glimpse of something moving confusedly in the mirror, and I could make out a vaguely bright figure in the reflection. However, I did not dwell on this vision. Already my hand was on the candelabra, and I struck at the abomination. The candles were blown out. I heard fighting, falling objects, but I did not wait to understand what was going on and ran outside the room. Still in shock, I felt neither the blood seeping from my wounds nor the nightly chill. I could hardly stand up. I was so distraught that I felt as if I were on a boat rocking up and down in the middle of a storm. I had walked through the corridor countless times, but the single straight line about 15 yards long, sporadically illuminated by the flashes of lightning, seemed an endless tunnel. Behind me, I heard the screams of damned souls fighting, wild beasts tearing one another apart. No sooner had I reached the end of the corridor than I heard the heavy steps of my enemy. "Your plan was a good idea." Oh, your plan was a good idea. It seemed to me that I heard Sethern, but I was too confused to be sure. No time to dither. I had to remember the layout of the mansion. It was dark, almost pitch black. Tarps on the roof kept rain from falling inside, despite the large sections of flooring that had been removed. I had to run to the upper floor, and from there reach the attic through the ladders. At each step in the dark, I felt driven forward, but I was too focused to pay any attention. I knew that the other was coming. He was following me, cursing. He had understood that the floor was full of empty spaces and had decided to climb the circular staircase to catch me upstairs. I hurried up, climbing the ladders. Second floor, third floor, quick! He was already there. I missed a rung, caught hold of the ladder, felt it slipping. Finally, I reached the beams I was going for, the ones used to work on the roof. I sat on the wood, keeping a precarious balance. I could hardly see. I had to fully concentrate not to fall. He was coming. He was already there, just below me. He was furious and yelled that he would break me, gut me, and rape me through my wounds until I died. Why didn't the floor give way? I had put so much hope in this supposedly rotten wood, and it was now bearing a man in heavy armor. I felt both desperate and angry at the cruel fate that favored that monster. I heard him reach the ladder I had just climbed. Since it had fallen down, he picked it up and put it back. He began to climb up, and in spite of all his weight, the wood creaked, but held. I shook my head. What could I do? I had never stopped retreating. What would Sethern have done? He had always been a fighter to me, someone who never gave up in the face of danger, even if it meant acting rashly. I felt vaguely that if he managed to inspire this quality in me, just for this night, it would be a lesson for my whole existence. If I could learn from him, our short marriage would finally have some meaning. I had 9 months, the length of a pregnancy, the time to become myself, to find myself. I stood up on trembling legs and moved forward with small steps while he was climbing. He was almost here. I came to the top of the ladder and sat on the beam, trying to position myself to push the ladder with both hands, my legs leaning on the wood. Chances were that I would topple down as well as if I managed to make the ladder fall, but I had no time to consider it. For me, this was a great feat. Suddenly, the ladder moved away from the beam. I could make out the movement of the monster trying to cling to me, to take me with him. But I was quicker this time and pushed harder. At first, it happened very slowly, with a succession of creaks. Then it was faster. A crash and a scream. The floor finally gave way under the impact, and he fell down. The fall of about 50 feet ended with a sickening crash sound down below. I caught the beam just in time. I was sliding and was now holding on with just my fingers. Would I know the same fate as my enemy right after defeating him? I gripped tight and took a deep breath. What could I do? Let myself go as flexibly as possible onto the intact floor 10 feet below and hope? In a final effort, I decided to swing toward the wall before releasing my grip, considering that the floor would probably be sturdier on the edge. I relaxed my aching, splintered hands and fell hard onto the floor. The impact was brutal, but less painful than expected. I stood up and slumped against the wall. I was shaken, covered with bruises and scratches, but I was safe. I sat on the stone steps of the circular staircase, getting my breath back and wiping away the tears that filled my eyes. I knew I was in shock. It was but nerves. I was relieved. You have always been smarter than me. Southern? His ghost? I don't want to say. I don't want to become what, he became. Horror struck me. I understood that I had killed my husband, and the fact his soul had not been in his body seemed like a flimsy excuse to me. The armor. You could have never helped me without destroying it, and it's indestructible. Entirely made of Tugark. No one must ever find it. If he told the truth, the armor alone could be worth as much as his treasure. Yet, I agreed with him. This thing had to be stopped. I needed to understand, to feel better, to ensure this nightmare would never occur again, and to put an end to the horrors of this night. Somehow, I had found my call to action. The next day at dawn, I went to check on the intruder's cadaver. Sethern's body was broken, and the armor seemed less alive. It was an ordeal to free his corpse from this protection that had become a prison. My intention was to leave, gathering the metal into bags and dumping it all into the most desolate chasm on my way. Resolute, I struggled to pull Sethern's body out into the castle courtyard. The vultures were there. About a dozen of them. I had never seen that before. I had the strange feeling that it was a gesture of sympathy. I stepped back inside. They came upon the corpse like a tawny swarm of feathers, staring at them with a kind of morbid fascination. It seemed right to me. It was necessary to accept a passing and the purification of the dead. A few hours later, only bones were left. I respectfully gathered my husband's remains to bring them back to his family, along with my cut braids. The end. Well, That was definitely intense. I definitely should have given you guys a warning. I didn't. I've read this story before, and it occurred to me as I was reading it that the content is beyond what I would normally read. So if you, I'm sorry if it crossed any lines for you. I hope that you stepped away and then came back. But if not, if you were able to make it through the whole thing, then thank you for listening. And that's a very, very powerful story. Like, um, yeah, um, talk about dark. So, I mean, it's like this is the mood. This is the mood of Esther, and I think that if I were to run a game, I probably wouldn't, include. Um, I probably wouldn't include that in my um, uh, depending on the session, but that specifically. But in terms of like it being dark, like this is we're dealing with some very heavy dark themes here. So thank you, Kellen, for throwing down that 18 plus warning, and yeah, thank you everybody for listening. That was yeah, that's book 1 of Hauntings. Yeah, huh. Sorry, I'm at a bit of a loss for words. Um, I really want to run this game for Invictus. Maybe I'll do a one shot or something. Um, it's interesting. I kind of got a vibe. I got a what's it called? A bit of a Cthulian vibe from that prose. There was something about it that was very like introspective and um, yeah, yeah, very introspective and yeah, thoughtful. Like the way that she's describing the monster and the way the horror kind of unfolded. It was reminiscent of Lovecraft to me. Maybe with less verbiage, which is fortunate for us. Yeah, you know what? I got a Darkest Dungeon vibe too when she's talking about like the, he wants to go out, he wants to be an adventurer. What's the line? Um, yeah, yeah. All of this seemed so strange, absurd, and futile. But what could I expect from someone who was convinced he could rise through strength of arms? Adventures, epic journeyings, unexpected encounters, discoveries, and the exploration of mysterious ruins in a quest for treasures were now his in the darkest dungeon. The darkest dungeon. It had a happy ending, Lauren. Um, yeah, it didn't. It didn't happen. It was just the build up. But yeah, the ending was it all worked out. So yeah. Well, I'm thinking that let's see, how long is the next one? Depending on how long the next one is, I'm thinking I might make it a shorter session today. Yeah, this one's pretty long. What the heck? Maybe I'll do one more. Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, very satisfying and clever little short story tool. Throwing the vultures in at the beginning to tie them in at the end. You know, they open and they close the story. I like that. All right, this one is called Grey Dawn by Penumbra. Father Mervyn, the Sagia whispered, gently shaking Antaeus. The young priest was startled awake, realizing that he had fallen asleep in the middle of his intense pondering. It was still dark around him, but he could make out the shape of Siobhan Arvale bending over him in the dim greyness that was starting to break through the cloudy sky in the east. He took a deep breath to speak, but she quickly put her hand on his mouth. "Shh, quiet. Sounds echo a great deal at this time of day." He obediently kept silent and sat up carefully. Right, I'm doing British for this one. Alteus had never had any problems getting up before dawn, and he could count on his fingers of a single hand the times when he had had to stifle a yawn during albines. However, the thoughts he could not help but mull over had prevented him from sleeping, until he had inadvertently succumbed amidst his contemplations. The short spell of unconsciousness had done little to quell his fears. He sighed and immediately cursed himself for being so noisy, but the Sagia did not stir. He felt that it was best to just wait. She had woken him up, and if she had something to tell him, he would soon know about it. However, as Siobhan remained silent, his still confused thoughts wandered back to the concerns that had been haunting him for the past few hours. Things had taken a most unexpected turn, to say the least. Still, Alteus believed that his future would be more peaceful, and he actually had a fairly good idea of what awaited him. 3 years ago, the young man had been assigned to a small parish. It had been made clear to him that, should he perform satisfactorily, he would be appointed to a more prestigious position within a few years. It had been acknowledged that his faith was undoubtedly pure, since the One, his divine omniscience, had granted him the gift of miracles, not once, but twice before his acceptation. Such a case was rare enough for the clergy of the One to become closely involved in his future. Alteus knew that he disappointed many people when he made public his intention to become a priest instead of embracing the career of Vector, or the rigorous and hard path of a Sagia. The One granted the gift of miracles sparingly, and even though each of the clergy's 6 branches included elect, those who clearly seemed to be marked by a divine influence were icons of hierarchy directed to best serve its interests. However, since the first day of his novitiate, long before he was touched by the One, Alteus knew that he was destined to become the gardener of the Creator's domains, and to look after the flock of the faithful. The order dressed in green had supported him in his choice all the way to his acceptation. In truth, Alteus gave little care to the promises of promotion. He strove to be worthy of the One's gift by serving him humbly, and he had grown attached to his little parish in the modest fishing village. Every day he prayed with conviction, devoutly maintained the small church, and proved both patient and open with his congregation's troubles in their frugal and thankless life. Never would he have imagined that he would be called to hunt down a sorcerer. A noise to his left snapped him back to reality. A sinister shape rose, as if the darkness had taken shape and suddenly emerged from its original nothingness to come forth. He started, but then heard a familiar whisper. "No light. They must sleep." Well, what's this? "No light. They must be asleep." Far from reassuring him, the murmur only increased the growing uneasiness in the young priest's heart. He did not like Blade Knight Decir, truly not. The man behaved like a killer, and he had not uttered more than 20 words since he and his companion in black had dragged Alteus away from his church. The gaunt, pallid, unshaven beanpole of a man spoke little, when he spoke at all. The rest of the time he just looked around, his lips a thin grey line, his black, clouded eyes concealing his thoughts. "Well then, Siobhan answered with a stronger voice than before. "It's time to go." Dakir's shadow gave no answer. Compared to the holy warrior, the Sagir seemed almost friendly, even though she looked like a worried, slovenly vagrant. The two defenders of the faith seemed to know each other well, but since Dakir never answered Alteus and his companion practiced the art of evasive answers, he did not know much more than the day before, the day of their meeting. Both had simply come to his door, and Siobhan had ordered him to take a few belongings and come with them. He had protested, but the Sagir had shown him the warrant bearing the seal of one of the main leaders of his order of Guidra. When he had been ready to follow them, she had stopped him and told him to take a sword, or at least a dagger. Alteus had never killed anyone, and his military service had conclusively demonstrated that he had neither the skill nor the inclination for fighting. However, when he arrived at the parish, he had found an old, well-maintained blade in a chest, probably forgotten there by his unknown predecessor. A plain, ordinary sword that he had quickly forgotten about, until Siobhan told him to arm himself. He got up and shook his travelling coat. The fresh morning dew had not even woken him up, but when he moved he realized that moisture had seeped through his cloak and dampened his clothes. Out of habit, he knelt down to begin Albines, but stopped when he noticed his two companions did not. In the uncertain light of dawn, he could make out their hands quickly making the sign of the Hexcelsis. Alteus sighed ever so softly, even though he felt incredibly noisy in the surrounding silence. He should have guessed that the Sagir and the Blade Knight would not be more inclined to pray at dawn than for Vesperines and Estelines. The day before, too, they had observed the sacred moment of prayer in a merely symbolic way, and he blushed in the darkness as he remembered the Sagir's words. "We are often on the road, and the One expects us to worship him through our deeds much more than prayers." He had learned through this novitiate that among the Vectors, Sagirs, and Blade Knights, many substituted the ritual prayers with shorter and even minimalistic observances. They argued that their demanding missions and their frequent travels in the service of the One prevailed over the long minutes required for each of the 6 daily prayers. At the time, and still now, he found it incongruous, almost blasphemous. But who would blame Sagirs for their lack of devotion? Doggedly, he remained silent on his knees for a long minute, and only stood up when he felt that one of his companions was about to call him. "We can go now." He strapped on his sword and made sure that the few things he had hurriedly packed away before leaving the church the previous day were still in order. Without a word from either of them, Dakir started leading the way through the barely visible tree trunks, while at their back the daylight was getting paler and clearer. They were about 500 steps away from the old crumbling Ingard, where the sorcerer Auric Martoin and his henchmen had taken refuge. According to Siobhan, there remained but 3 of them after the fight, during which the sorcerer had narrowly escaped capture 3 days before. Of the small group in charge of hunting down the curse maker, only Errol Dakir and his Sagir companion had survived. When Siobhan had told him about it, Alteus knew that she was not telling him everything. He suspected that the deaths of her brothers and sisters in arms had affected her deeply, even though she showed nothing of it. As for Dakir, he seemed insensitive and was even colder than he was silent. They moved carefully, but the pale sky brightened with every passing minute, and they began to clearly see the jutting roots awaiting the unwary hiker's foot. If everything went well, they would find the renegades just after dawn and would then have the advantage over them. The Ingard had a vantage point on the road, and according to Siobhan, Martoin and his fellows would be making use of it to watch for prospective pursuers. Hence the detour through the groves of conifers to strike at their enemies from where they did not expect it. Ah. They stopped when Dekir had held up a warning hand. After a few seconds of remaining motionless, the Sagir and the young priest came closer to the Blade Knight. The three of them were hiding behind a majestic fir tree about 20 steps away from the inn guard they could see just below. Although one of the two buildings still looked defensible, the other was just a roofless ruin, and the few crumbling sections that remained of the low wall would not prove much of an obstacle. Something violently struck the trunk, very close to Artaeus's head. He then understood that, in the end, their enemy was much warier than expected. They turned their heads and saw a bowman 15 steps away from them hurriedly nocking another arrow. Another arrow, that's how I pronounce it in British. They turned their heads and saw a bowman 15 steps away from them hurriedly nocking another arrow. Errol Dekir rushed him with a savage grunt, hurrying to kill him before he could draw his bow again. The sorcerer... bow again. Yeah, that's another one. The sorcerer's accomplice gave a cry, and the sound of a door flying open could be heard from the inn guard. With a curse, Siobhan dashed to the small derelict fort, leaving Artaeus alone, unsure of what was supposed to do. Unsure of what he was supposed to do. Pardon me. This is what happened when you drink beer on the job. He turned his head toward Dekir and saw the renegade fire an arrow at close quarters. The sound of the projectile piercing through the Blade Knight's leather jerkin and biting his flesh was horrible, but Dekir barely flinched and did not even stumble as he raised his weapon against the attacker. There was enough light for Artaeus to see the horror and panic-stricken loot of the man facing his imminent death. The young priest looked away and wished he had covered his ears when he heard Dekir's axe crush the bones and tear the flesh of his unfortunate opponent. Right in front of him, he saw the Sagir drawing two blades and charging at the two men stepping out of the inn guard. To his great surprise, part of his mind remained cold and lucid, commenting on the frantic events occurring before his eyes. This did not make any sense, an inner voice told him. Those men should have stayed safe in the building, from where the bowman could have been shot at them from the ample cover of the arrow slits. Why had they posted a sentinel outside, and why were they giving up their main strategic advantage? Fear seized the priest when he saw the man waving some kind of pebble. From his position, he couldn't make out the symbols, but he was certain the man was one of those pagans who used the profane Oghamic stones to enslave the natural spirits and divert them from their role assigned by the Creator. Knowing that he was hunting down a sorcerer was one thing. Facing him was another. Sliding nimbly on the mud, Siobhan dodged an awkward stroke from the sorcerer's minion, then brought one of her blades forward in a rising motion, stabbing the man's stomach and driving the steel into his lungs. She dropped her weapon, recovered her balance, and went for Mertoen. Artaeus felt his throat tighten when he saw the sorcerer's skin transform, turning brown and rough like bark. The blow from the Sagir only scratched the strange natural armor, and she was not able to avoid her opponent's ensuing attack. Mertoen bludgeoned her with a heavy mace, and only the man's haste and lack of training saved his enemy. Siobhan was thrown to the side with a resounding sound of cracking bones. Standing above her groaning body, the sorcerer hesitated for a while, then suddenly lifted his eyes, as if he had felt Artaeus's stare on him. They stared at each other. Ulrich Mertoen was about 30 years old, powerfully built like a labourer or soldier. He sported a short red beard that must have looked good on him before weeks of neglect. His grey eyes had a worried look, frightened even. Once again, Artaeus surprised himself, being able to methodically register so many insignificant details while he remained gaping, his legs refusing to move. The sorcerer started walking toward him, carefully avoiding the Sagir, who was still twitching at his feet. A startling conviction was growing in Artaeus with each step the man took toward him. He knew that he would never, ever be able to look away from the one who was about to kill him. Then Matoen froze, as if he had suddenly felt something deep inside him. As if he had suddenly felt something deep inside him. A silent shock that made him turn his head. Artaeus also turned and saw Erold Dakir striding heavily toward Matoen, despite the arrow burrowed in his chest. The sorcerer gave a strangled sigh.
So that's what it was. But it's impossible.
Paying him no heed, Dakir kept moving forward, laboriously but inexorably. Matoen staggered back hesitantly, then frantically searched his sack for another ogham with which he could unleash his evil powers. Artaeus never knew what drove him to act right then. The moment before, he was stunned by fear, but then he suddenly leaped forward like a deer lunging at his rival. He knocked Matoen down, and they both fell onto the pine needle-covered stones.
No!
The sorcerer shouted, struggling, scratching Artaeus's face and kicking wildly at the young priest who was shielding himself as best he could. Matoen pushed him away and raised his eyes just in time to see Dakir's axe smash his face. He did not even have time to scream as the powerful stroke split his head in two, splashing Artaeus with gore and bone splinters. The young priest remained there, half curled up, with Matoen's body spasming beside him. His heart was racing madly, painfully ringing through his entire body. Impossible, 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 his inner voice repeated. Frozen in horror, he gazed at Erold Dakir's looming over him and the dead sorcerer. Artaeus's stare could not leave the arrow stuck in the Blade Knight's leather coat deep into his flesh. Dakir should not have been able to stand after such efforts, but there he was, motionless on his 2 feet. With that strange attention to detail that seemed to have taken hold of him, Artaeus noticed that he could not see the man breathe, whereas he should have been huffing in painfully. Above all, in spite of the terrible wound close to his heart, Dakir was not bleeding. Dakir was not bleeding. The Blade Knight's black, blank eyes stared at him, enigmatic and impersonal. Then Dakir raised his eyes, which broke the spell that had held Artaeus motionless. His body and mind became one again, and the fear suddenly worsened, taking more consistence and depth, but also losing the petrifying power it had held over him. Drawing from an energy he did not know he possessed, the priest slowly turned his head, following the dead Blade Knight's gaze. Siobhan was limping with difficulty toward them, her face drawn with pain, bent by the blow that must have broken her arm and maybe even 1 or 2 ribs.
I'll need you, Father Mer...
That's an accent. Oh no! Did I stop? Am I still here? No, I think I'm good. Just looking at Mike's comment. Sorry, I'll get back to reading.
I'll need you.
I can't do it without a French accent. Oh no, I stopped. What happened? Hello. Still streaming. Uh-oh. There we go. Should be back soon. Oh, we back? Okay, we're back. All right. We're almost done this tale. We're almost done.
I'll need you, Father Mervyn.
The Sagia stuttered, a thin trickle of blood running down her lips. Something deep inside the priest began to move, and he slowly stood up. Time resumed its normal course, and he ran to Siobhan, his mind fiercely repressing the impulse to stop and look at the abomination behind him. In the greyness of dawn, surrounded by their enemies' bodies, he helped the woman to a nearby rock where he sat her down. Then, closing his eyes to focus as much as he could to avoid laying them on Dakir, he fervently prayed the one to grant him the wholesome regenerative power of healing miracle he had bestowed on him. The divine manifestation slowly spread in the air around them, like a fresh, pure sensation devoid of coldness. Both reinvigorating and appeasing, it gathered in his hands, which he laid on the Sagir's side. She winced when her bones and flesh returned to their healthy state within moments, and he released his will, letting the divine power dissipate and go back to the great All. He opened his eyes and saw her smile sadly at him. Her face was marked with a weariness that could not be attributed to her now erased wound. She nodded and told him softly, "Harold needs you too." I don't know what her accent is, whatever. He opened his mouth, shocked. How could she? How dare she? The sound of the Blade Knight's heavy steps caught his attention, and he felt terror slowly settle in, along with deep disgust. Dakir stopped a few steps in front of him and knelt down, letting go of his axe. The dead warrior, with the arrow grotesquely protruding from his flesh, slowly took hold of the hexelsis tied around his neck, and he kissed it slowly before looking at him.
"I am ready. Hurry, please."
Alteus frowned and turned to Siobhan as she stood up and laid a hand on his shoulder. "Come, father. One thing remains to be done here, then I will take you back to your beloved parish. In truth, this is another reason we brought you here." "Excuse me?" She gave him an almost mocking smirk. "Of course. I am a Sagir. I know all that I need to know about you. The gifts the Creator granted you when you were just an adept clad in grey. The news spread through all of the temple. Did you not realize that you were put aside for your own protection? That your superiors wanted to ensure that the factions within our church did not compete for the standard of faith you are willing to become?" He gave no answer. There was none to give. "When I understood that this unbeliever would pass near the village you live in, I knew that the Creator had not turned away from us. I knew that he was offering us the chance to do his will and, above all, allow Harold to die righteously." He shivered and could not help glancing at the Blade Knight's motionless, kneeling figure. "But he is already dead." "He is, for 11 days exactly. But he began to move again as I was about to set fire to our companion's funeral pyre. His pyre. For a moment I hoped, but his heart is no longer beating. He does not breathe. He can move and speak, but he is not really alive anymore." Alteus gulped. "You did not... You accepted that... You deceived me."
"Quick!"
Dakir's whisper startled them. Siobhan grabbed this young priest's arm and spoke to him firmly. "Father Mervyn, I do not know what force brought my old friend back from the dead and keeps him in this world without truly existing like you and me. I do not know what this force is. I do not know what it is expecting from him. But I do know that he is filled with murderous impulses, and that, with time—" "Why didn't you burn him?" She gave him a shocked look. "And what about his soul, father?" He did not answer. She was right. If Harold, devoted father of the faith and devout arm of the One, died under the influence of that unholy force, what would become of him? What if his soul, despite years of steadfast service, were to eternally roam limbo? What if, instead of dying, he returned as a demon, or took possession of a body as the Feondas sometimes did? Could he accept that a man who had given up on many things and lost his life in the service of the one would suffer such torment? But, what do you want me... He suddenly understood what she expected of him, what they both expected of him. Altaeus Mervyn, young prodigy of the temple, elect of the One, felt his determination harden. His duty had just been revealed to him. It was obvious, and he knew he was perfectly capable of performing it. One more time, despite the circumstances, he was amazed at the perfect omniscience, the meticulous foresight of the one who had put him on his servant's path when they needed the purifying miracle with which he had gifted Altaeus. Without fear now, he turned to the still kneeling herald Dakir. He looked deep into his dead eyes and saw the torments of the faithful and pious mind, prisoner of the cold flesh. He saw fear and despair as this devoted servant of the One tried to remain sincere and continue serving him despite the grim, unnatural fate he was suffering. He found himself smiling briefly at Siobhan, who was standing by his side, and he was even more surprised when she smiled back. All the Sagir's humanity, friendship, and loyalty showed through that smile. For the first time in his life, Altaeus knew that the austere inquisitors of the temple were much more than stone-hard hunters in a black coat. Just like him, they were humble, devout human beings who, despite their imperfections, strove to serve and apprehend the divine will, faithfully marching on, despite the hardships, and bringing the truth to those who suffered from uncertainty. Altaeus Mervyn was a priest, but at that moment the Creator wanted him to bring the comfort of divine truth as an elect. He wanted him to purify the body of the brave Dakir and wash his soul so that it might join the kingdom of fresh, pure, and eternal peacefulness. He bent his head among the silent fir trees under the clouds of this long grey day that was dawning, with a warm smile at the kneeling night. The dead flesh that had sickened and disgusted him no longer did. He put his hand on the dead warrior's cropped hair and closed his eyes to focus all his piety, all his will, all his faith in the most perfect miracle he would ever request from his Creator. The end. Legit! I liked that one. That was a interesting spin on the idea of inquisitors. Let's see. So we're live again. Sweet tooth kicking, no sweets to get rid of it. Oh, wow, you just reminded me that I got some chocolate in a backpack from Halloween. All right. Don't know why I went all the way up there, but there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in and hanging out with me. I'm pretty wiped. I'm ready to go to sleep, but guess who has another meeting? This guy. Busy day. Busy time. So, I'm going to head out. Thank you guys very much for hanging out. It's lovely to see all of you guys. It was great hanging out with you on the weekend. I had a blast with Minecraft and the panel and then the Jackbox games. That was awesome, and I'm really glad to see that that's going to be hosted again. Thank you for organizing that and keeping that going, and I hope it brings lots of laughter and fun. Abe Hughes brought up a really great idea earlier about a writing group. I think that if you guys want to, just get something casual going, I will reaffirm that I would love to narrate your stuff on a Justin Reads, provided it's not too long, less than 2,500 words. Maybe I'll extend it to 3,000 words, if you're, chances are I'm going to want to read it anyways, so might as well But yeah, try to keep it under 2,500. But if you spill over, don't worry about it. And then try to edit it. Actually, maybe that's the next challenge. Yeah, if you guys want to do a writing group, get that going and let me know. And if you write something that you'd like for me to read sometime, let me know. Send it to me. Feel free to just message me on Facebook, and I'll drop it in a maybe we can do like a shared Google Drive or something like that everybody has access to. So if you want to go in and edit what you've written, then you don't have to go through me to be like, oh, I've got a new version. Oh, I got a new version now. Can you delete the old one? That'd probably be the most the easiest way. So, anyways, just thoughts. I think it'd be great. And yeah, let's do this again, guys. This is fun. I'll talk to you soon. And well, and actually, before we do, yeah, thank you very much to Agate RPG Studios for letting me read the stories without me asking. I will be in touch. And yeah, maybe we can do this again with proper permission. But yeah, please check out their work. I'll be leaving a link in the description. And if you are interested in some dark RPGs, then this is a place to go. They've also got the same company has a, let me show you just quickly. Check this out. This is Fate Forge. This is from the same company, Studio Agate. And it is a 5e, what is it called? Supplement, I guess. And I got this at Gen Con too. And they did like a custom little art thing for me. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's like a little backdrop, which was lovely. But yeah, and it's, again, I just don't have the time to read this, but I love the art. If you ever have a second, like, just look up Fate Forge, and just like the art and the layout of this book is just beautiful. And so I highly recommend that you look into it. Maybe this is something that I'll run someday as well. Yeah, show and tell with Justin. Exactly. Look at this cool thing I have. Look at this cool thing I have. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you soon. Love you all. Thank you for joining. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And yeah, that's all the things that I said. Good night. Now how do I turn off the stream? That is the question. There it is.